The small town of Ashwood was nestled deep within a valley surrounded by dense, ancient forests. Locals rarely ventured far into the woods, whispering tales of strange disappearances and eerie sounds that echoed through the trees after dark. It was a place that most outsiders overlooked, a forgotten dot on the map where time seemed to stand still. Evelyn had never believed in ghost stories or old legends, but when she inherited her late uncle's estate in Ashwood, she felt compelled to visit. The sprawling mansion sat on the outskirts of town, shrouded by gnarled oaks and a perpetual mist that clung to the ground like a cold breath. On her first night, Evelyn unpacked her belongings in the dusty attic, the creaking floorboards echoing beneath her feet. She had barely settled when a faint whisper floated through the room. At first, she thought it was the wind, but the voice seemed to form words, soft, pleading, almost desperate. "Help me." She froze, heart pounding, scanning the shadows that gathered in the corners. The attic window rattled as a cold breeze swept in, carrying the scent of damp earth and something far older, something rotten. Determined not to give in to fear, Evelyn told herself it was her imagination playing tricks. Yet, as the night deepened, the whispers grew louder, accompanied by soft footsteps that seemed to circle the house's upper floors. The next morning, she spoke to the townsfolk. Most avoided eye contact or quickly changed the subject when asked about the mansion. "Old Hollow House," one elderly man finally said, voice low. "Cursed. Nobody lives there long." "What happened?" Evelyn pressed. He shook his head. "Years ago, the family vanished without a trace. Some say a darkness took them, something that feeds on fear and regret." Evelyn's curiosity only deepened. That evening, armed with a flashlight and a journal, she explored the mansion's lower levels. The walls were lined with faded portraits whose eyes seemed to follow her every move. In the cellar, she found an ancient book bound in cracked leather. Its pages were filled with strange symbols and drawings of twisted figures that looked like shadows come to life. Suddenly, a chilling scream pierced the silence, and the flashlight flickered out. Evelyn's breath caught as the air grew thick, suffocating. "Who's there?" she whispered, but only silence answered. From the darkness, something cold brushed against her skin, a shadow, fleeting yet alive. Heart racing, she ran back up the stairs, slamming the cellar door shut behind her. That night, the whispers returned, clearer than before. "Find the truth, before it finds you." Sleep eluded Evelyn that night. The phrase echoed relentlessly in her mind. "Find the truth, before it finds you." What truth? And what was it that lurked within the walls of the old hollow house? At dawn, the mist still clung low over the grounds, muffling the world into silence. Evelyn pulled on her coat and stepped outside. Determined to learn more about the mansion's past, she headed toward the town's small library, a quaint brick building with dusty shelves and the faint smell of aging paper. Inside, the librarian, a thin woman with sharp eyes, listened carefully when Evelyn asked about the history of the house and its former occupants. "The Hollow family," the librarian began, voice dropping conspiratorially. "They were wealthy once, but strange things started happening after the death of the youngest child, Clara. Some say she died in the house under mysterious circumstances." "Did anyone investigate?" Evelyn asked, intrigued. "There were rumors. People claimed to hear Clara's laughter in the halls, see fleeting shadows that didn't belong to any living thing. Then the whole family vanished one night, their beds cold, the house empty. No bodies were ever found." Evelyn's pulse quickened. She borrowed old newspaper clippings and town records, poring over accounts of the disappearance and previous reports of eerie occurrences. One article mentioned a local priest who had visited the house shortly before the family vanished, warning of a dark presence that had taken root. Back at the mansion, Evelyn felt the weight of eyes watching her every move. As twilight fell, she decided to revisit the cellar, hoping to uncover more clues. This time, she brought a lantern and a small box of tools. The air in the cellar was damp and stale, filled with the scent of decay. The walls were covered with strange, faded symbols that seemed to pulse faintly under the lantern's glow. While examining a crumbling section of the wall, Evelyn's fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. She pried loose a hidden panel, revealing a small compartment containing a rusted key and a folded piece of parchment. The parchment was brittle, its ink faded but still legible. It contained a hastily scrawled note. "The shadows know. Beware the whispers beneath. Trust no one, for the darkness feeds on doubt and despair. The hollow secret lies below the roots of the ancient tree in the garden. Evelyn's heart hammered. The garden outside was overgrown and tangled, dominated by a massive, twisted oak whose gnarled roots snaked deep into the earth. Guided by a mixture of dread and determination, she stepped out into the chill night. The moon was hidden behind heavy clouds, and the garden seemed alive with shifting shadows. The ancient oak loomed ahead like a sentinel guarding forgotten horrors. Kneeling by the roots, Evelyn unearthed a small iron trapdoor covered in moss and dirt. Her hands trembled as she used the key to unlock it. The door creaked open to reveal a dark, narrow staircase descending into the earth. From below came a faint, rhythmic tapping, like fingers drumming on stone. Taking a deep breath, Evelyn began her descent, the lantern's glow barely penetrating the oppressive blackness. The air grew colder with each step, and the tapping grew louder, echoing off the walls like a sinister heartbeat. At the bottom, she entered a small cavern carved into the rock. Ancient carvings lined the walls, symbols of twisted shapes, eyes, and serpents intertwined in impossible patterns. In the center lay a shallow pit filled with dark, swirling mist. From the mist, ghostly faces emerged, hollow-eyed, silent, and full of sorrow. Evelyn staggered back, the whispers rising into a cacophony of desperate pleas and angry curses. Suddenly, a shadow detached itself from the cavern wall, tall, shifting, its form flickering between human and something else. It reached toward her with claw-like hands, voice like a chorus of echoes. "You have come, but are you ready to face what lies beneath?" Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as the cavern's walls seemed to close in. The shadows whispered secrets of betrayal, loss, and an ancient curse bound to the Hollow family, a darkness that fed on the living and the dead alike. She had uncovered the truth, but it was far darker than she had ever imagined. And the shadows were waiting for her choice, to flee and live in ignorance, or descend further into the nightmare, risking everything to break the curse. Evelyn's heart pounded fiercely as the shadowy figure loomed before her, its form flickering like smoke caught in a dying flame. The cavern's cold breath whispered warnings that gnawed at her mind. "Are you ready?" it repeated, voice echoing like a twisted lullaby. She swallowed hard and nodded. "I need to know. I need to understand." The shadow seemed to ripple with approval. "Very well. The truth is not kind." It stretched its claw-like fingers toward the mist in the pit. The swirling faces twisted and morphed, becoming clearer, the Hollow family's ghostly forms trapped in eternal torment. Long ago, the shadow began. The Hollow family sought power beyond mortal grasp. Desperate to save their dying daughter Clara, they turned to an ancient force buried beneath the roots of this very tree, a darkness older than time, hungry and cunning. Evelyn listened, spellbound and horrified. The ritual bound their souls to the shadow realm, granting Clara unnatural life, but at a terrible price. The darkness fed on their fear, their regret, until it consumed their bodies and fractured their spirits. The faces in the mist wept silent tears, eyes hollow yet pleading. Those who enter the house inherit the curse, the shadows whisper, searching for new hosts to feed upon. Escape is a lie. The darkness clings and twists reality, warping minds until they too are lost. Evelyn felt a chill crawl up her spine. The shadow's next words were almost a whisper. Only by confronting your own deepest fear, the one you hide even from yourself, can the curse be broken. A sudden image flashed in Evelyn's mind. A childhood memory she had buried, a secret she never dared face. Gathering her courage, she stepped closer to the pit, peering into the swirling mist. "Tell me how," she demanded. The shadow's eyes gleamed. "You must descend into the heart of the darkness itself. Face what lies beneath the roots. But beware, the darkness will take many forms. Trust nothing but your own will." With a flick of its shadowy hand, a narrowed tunnel opened beneath the cavern floor, descending deeper into the earth. Evelyn hesitated only a moment before stepping forward into the abyss. The air grew thick and suffocating as she made her way down the narrow passage. Her lantern flickered violently, casting grotesque shadows that danced like demons on the walls. At the tunnel's end, she emerged into a vast underground chamber. Its ceiling stretched impossibly high, dripping with stalactites that gleamed like teeth. The chamber floor was cracked and broken, pulsing with an unnatural darkness that seemed to breathe. In the center, a large stone altar stood, stained with ancient, dried blood. Around it lay scattered remnants of arcane objects, bones, shattered glass, and twisted metal. Suddenly, the chamber was filled with whispers, voices of the lost, the damned, and the cursed. They spoke of betrayal, sorrow, and endless torment. A figure appeared on the altar, a woman draped in tattered white, eyes blazing with fury and pain. Evelyn's breath caught. It was Clara Hollow. "Why did you come?" Clara's voice echoed like a funeral dirge. "To end the curse," Evelyn replied, voice trembling but resolute. Clara laughed, a sound both beautiful and terrifying. "Many have tried, none have succeeded. The darkness feeds on despair. To break free, you must face your own." Evelyn closed her eyes, bracing herself for the nightmare to come. Evelyn's eyes snapped open, her breath shallow and ragged in the chilling silence of the underground chamber. Clara's blazing eyes bore into her soul, searching for weakness, for fear. "Your heart is heavy," Clara said softly, "but the darkness feeds on more than just sorrow. It hunts your deepest fears, the shadows you hide even from yourself." Suddenly, the chamber began to shift. The walls pulsed and warped, the floor beneath Evelyn's feet melting into a swirling abyss of black mist. She stumbled back, clutching her lantern, but the flickering light offered no comfort. "Face it," Clara whispered, her voice a haunting melody that echoed through the cavern. Evelyn's vision blurred, and then she was no longer in the chamber. Instead, she found herself standing in the small town of Ashwood, but something was wrong. The streets were empty, silent except for the faint rustling of leaves. Houses loomed like broken skeletons, windows shattered, doors hanging open. A cold wind brushed past her, carrying a familiar voice, a voice she had tried to forget. "Evelyn?" Her heart lurched. It was her mother's voice. The shadows twisted around her, shaping into the figure of a woman she had loved and lost. Her mother's face was pale and drawn, eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. "Why did you leave me?" the apparition whispered, tears streaming down her ghostly cheeks. Evelyn felt the old pain, buried deep beneath years of denial. Guilt, regret, and longing surged through her like a tidal wave. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I didn't know how to stay." The apparition reached out, and the shadows closed in. Evelyn's fear threatened to overwhelm her, but she gritted her teeth and forced herself to stand tall. "No," she said firmly. "I won't let the darkness consume me." The shadows recoiled, dissolving into mist. The vision faded, replaced once again by the cold stone chamber underground. Clara's voice echoed softly, "You have begun to face your fear, but the trial is not over." Suddenly, the chamber walls cracked open, revealing a corridor lined with mirrors, each reflecting a twisted version of Evelyn. In one, she was old and frail; in another, she was lost and alone; in yet another, consumed by madness. The whispers returned, mocking, cruel. "Which one will you become?" they hissed. Evelyn stepped forward, staring into each reflection. She saw her worst nightmares, her darkest doubts, the failure, the loneliness, the despair. Her mind screamed to flee, to give in. But somewhere deep inside, a flame burned, a flicker of hope, of defiance. With trembling hands, she shattered the nearest mirror. Glass exploded into shards, scattering like stars across the floor. The whispers faltered, their power weakening. One by one, Evelyn smashed the mirrors, each shattering blow banishing a fragment of darkness. Finally, the corridor crumbled, revealing a path back to the cavern's altar. Clara smiled faintly, her fury softened. "You are stronger than I expected." Evelyn, exhausted but resolute, knew the curse was not yet broken, but she had taken the first step. Evelyn stood before the altar, the weight of the trials pressing down on her like a suffocating shroud. Clara's ghostly figure lingered nearby, her expression unreadable. "You have faced your fears," Clara said quietly, "but there is one truth you must uncover before the curse can be lifted." Evelyn's curiosity sparked, though exhaustion clung to her bones. "What truth?" Clara's eyes darkened. "The darkness did not take my family by chance. It was summoned, betrayed from within." Suddenly, the chamber walls glowed faintly, revealing a hidden mural etched into the stone. Evelyn stepped closer, tracing the ancient images with her eyes. The mural told a story of a pact made long ago between the hollow ancestors and a shadow entity promising power and protection. But the pact came with a price. A blood sacrifice every generation to feed the darkness. One figure stood apart, marked with a symbol of a serpent coiled around a dagger. "That is your uncle," Clara said softly. "He was the one who summoned the darkness, desperate to save his family but blinded by greed. He bound the curse to this land, dooming us all." Evelyn's mind reeled. Her uncle, the man who left her the house, was the architect of the nightmare. "But why leave me the house?" she asked. "To pass the burden," Clara replied. "The curse seeks a new host, someone strong enough to break it or be consumed." Evelyn clenched her fists. She refused to be a pawn in this dark game. "I will end this," she vowed. Suddenly, the chamber trembled. The shadows surged, angry and desperate. From the depths emerged a massive, writhing form, a creature of darkness and smoke, eyes burning like embers. The entity roared, shaking the cavern. "You cannot escape," it hissed. "The curse is eternal." Evelyn's heart pounded. The final battle had begun. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the ancient book she found in the cellar. Flipping quickly through its pages, she found the ritual, a binding spell to imprison the darkness forever. Chanting the words, her voice grew stronger with each verse. The cavern trembled violently as the entity lunged toward her, claws reaching. Light burst from the altar, engulfing Evelyn and the darkness in a blinding blaze. When the light faded, silence reigned. The shadows dissolved into mist, the curse broken, or so it seemed. Evelyn emerged from the underground chamber, dawn breaking over Ashwood. The mansion felt lighter, the oppressive weight lifted. But deep in the forest, beneath the roots of the ancient oak, something stirred. A whisper floated on the wind. "This is only the beginning." Days passed since Evelyn's encounter beneath the ancient oak, but the quiet that settled over Ashwood felt fragile, like a calm before a storm. The townsfolk noticed the change too. The oppressive air that had hung over the town for years seemed to lift, and the forest's eerie whispers faded into silence. Yet Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that something watched her from the shadows. She returned to the mansion, intent on packing her belongings and leaving Ashwood behind. But as she moved through the house, a chilling cold followed her, slipping beneath her skin and crawling through her bones. In the attic, the whispers returned, softer this time, almost mournful. Not gone, not free. Her heart quickened. Had the darkness truly been banished, or merely driven back? Determined to find answers, Evelyn revisited the ancient book. Hidden within its pages was a cryptic passage she hadn't noticed before, written in a language she didn't recognize. Seeking help, she traveled to a nearby town to meet a scholar rumored to specialize in the occult and ancient languages. The scholar, a stern man with piercing eyes, examined the passage and shook his head gravely. "This is a warning," he said. "The curse is tied to a cycle. It may be broken for now, but in time, it will return, stronger and more vengeful." Evelyn's blood ran cold. "Is there no way to end it forever?" He looked at her solemnly. "Only by severing the source, destroying the ancient oak itself. But that tree is no ordinary plant. It is a vessel, a prison, and a gateway." Back in Ashwood, Evelyn stood before the twisted oak, the gnarled roots curling like serpents into the earth. She raised an axe, hand trembling, and swung. The blade struck bark, but the tree resisted, groaning like a wounded beast. The ground trembled beneath her feet as dark tendrils erupted from the roots, writhing toward her like living shadows. She swung again and again, each blow met with furious resistance. Suddenly, a voice echoed in her mind, Clara's, pleading and desperate. "Do not destroy the tree, it holds us all." Evelyn hesitated, axe raised. The shadows around her shifted, revealing faces trapped within the bark, the hollow family, imprisoned but alive in a suspended agony. Her heart broke, realizing the truth. The tree was both prison and protector. Destroying it would unleash horrors untold. Lowering the axe, Evelyn whispered, "There has to be another way." The wind rustled the leaves, carrying a faint, sorrowful whisper. "Choose wisely." Evelyn's hands trembled as she stepped away from the ancient oak. The weight of her decision pressed heavily on her chest. The tree was not just a vessel for the curse. It was a prison, holding the tortured souls of the Hollow family captive, preventing something far worse from escaping. The whispers in the wind had grown louder, more urgent, as if the forest itself was pleading with her. She needed to find another way to break the curse without unleashing the darkness locked within the roots. Returning to the mansion, Evelyn pored over the ancient book again, searching for clues she might have missed. Her eyes scanned every symbol, every cryptic note, desperate for a solution. Hours passed until she stumbled upon a passage hidden between the pages, a ritual of release, one that required a sacrifice not of blood, but of memory and pain. A binding spell to sever the curse's hold by confronting the source of sorrow and offering forgiveness. Evelyn's breath caught. The ritual was dangerous and its success uncertain, but it was the only hope she had. That night, under a moonless sky, Evelyn gathered the necessary ingredients: herbs from the garden, a silver dagger from the attic, and the ancient book itself. She lit candles around the altar in the underground cavern and began the incantation. As she spoke the ancient words, the air thickened and shadows swirled violently around her. The ground trembled, and from the depths of the cavern rose the dark entity, larger and more furious than before. But this time, Evelyn did not flee. She stood firm, reciting the spell, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her heart. Visions assaulted her mind, memories of loss, betrayal, and guilt she had long buried. She faced them all, naming each pain aloud and offering forgiveness, to her uncle, to Clara, to herself. The entity howled in rage, writhing against the spell's power. Light erupted from the altar, casting the cavern in a radiant glow. Slowly, the darkness began to retreat, shrinking back toward the roots of the ancient oak. When the light faded, the cavern was silent. The oppressive weight lifted. Evelyn felt a calm settle over her, a gentle warmth where cold dread had once lived. Outside, the first light of dawn crept through the trees. She had broken the curse, or so she hoped. As she ascended the stairs, Evelyn knew that some scars would remain, memories she would never forget. But the shadows no longer whispered her name. For now, days turned to weeks after the ritual, and Ashwood began to breathe again. The oppressive weight that had hung over the town seemed to dissipate, and the eerie silence that once blanketed the forest was replaced by the gentle rustle of leaves and the songs of birds. Evelyn found solace in the newfound peace but remained vigilant. The mansion no longer felt like a prison, but she still sensed a faint presence, a lingering echo of what had transpired. One evening, as she sat by the fireplace, the ancient book resting on her lap, Evelyn noticed a loose page fluttering from its binding. The page revealed a final entry, written in a trembling hand. The darkness may be bound, but it is not destroyed. It waits, biding its time in the forgotten places where shadows dwell. Remember, forgiveness can heal, but vigilance is the shield. A chill ran down Evelyn's spine. The curse might be broken, but the darkness had not been vanquished, only restrained. That night, she dreamed of Clara, not as a terrifying specter, but as a sad, gentle girl reaching out to her with pleading eyes. "Thank you," Clara whispered before fading into the light. Evelyn awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. She decided to stay in Ashwood, to protect the town from whatever shadows might still linger. She began documenting her experiences in a journal, detailing every encounter, every whispered secret, every moment of terror and courage. As the sun rose over the valley, Evelyn stepped outside, the ancient oak standing tall and serene behind the mansion. The forest was alive with possibility, a fragile balance between light and shadow. And Evelyn was ready to face whatever came next. Months passed, and life in Ashwood settled into a cautious normalcy. Evelyn's days were filled with research and restoration, her nights with quiet reflection by the fire. Yet, the faintest chill still traced the edges of her senses, a reminder that darkness never truly fades. One stormy evening, as thunder rattled the windows and rain lashed against the panes, Evelyn heard a soft tapping at the front door. Hesitant, she opened it to find a young boy standing drenched and shivering, his wide eyes reflecting fear beyond his years. I need help," he stammered. "My name is Thomas. I saw the shadows. They followed me." Evelyn's heart tightened. The curse might have been weakened, but it was far from over. She ushered Thomas inside and listened as he recounted a harrowing tale, strange figures moving in the dark woods, whispers calling his name, and a terrible sense of being watched. That night, Evelyn vowed to protect Ashwood once more. Together, they ventured into the forest, lanterns held high against the encroaching darkness. The trees seemed to close in, their branches twisting like grasping hands. Suddenly, whispers surrounded them, chilling and urgent. "Return what was taken, the debt must be paid." Evelyn's grip tightened on the lantern. The shadows coalesced into forms, twisted, wailing figures that seemed caught between worlds. Thomas trembled beside her, but Evelyn stood firm, recalling the ritual that had once bound the darkness. "We must find the source," she said. "The debt must be settled, or the shadows will consume us all." Deeper into the woods, they found an ancient stone altar, covered in moss and carved with symbols that pulsed with dark energy. Evelyn prepared to perform the ritual again, this time with Thomas's help. The shadows watched, waiting. The battle between light and dark was far from over. The night was thick with tension as Evelyn and Thomas stood before the ancient stone altar deep in the heart of the forest. The air buzzed with dark energy, and the shadows writhed like living things, their voices a chilling chorus demanding retribution. Evelyn unrolled the ancient book's fragile pages and began chanting the binding incantation once more. Thomas, though young and trembling, joined her in the recitation, his voice growing steadier with each verse. The shadows screamed in fury, swirling into a tempest of darkness that threatened to engulf them both. But Evelyn held firm, her eyes blazing with determination. As the ritual reached its crescendo, a blinding light erupted from the altar, piercing the darkness and forcing the shadows back into the earth. The forest fell silent, the oppressive weight lifting as if a great burden had been cast aside. Exhausted, Evelyn sank to her knees, breathing heavily. Thomas looked up at her, eyes wide with awe and relief. "The curse is sealed," Evelyn whispered, "for now. But the shadows will always linger in the corners of the world, waiting for the weak." She rose, determination hardening in her gaze. Ashwood was free, but the fight against darkness was eternal. As dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight filtered through the trees, bathing the forest in warm golden light. Evelyn knew her journey was far from over, but she was ready to face whatever shadows lay ahead. For she had learned that true courage was not the absence of fear, but the will to stand against it.